cool. Recording started. So let me open one doc. Actually, I'm also preparing one doc for the interview. So I'm even though I'm collecting the questions, like even from my experience and other people also who recently going through the interview. So actually, I haven't given any recent interviews, but I have my old database kind of when I was appearing for actively interviews. But also, few candidates or few of my friends or colleagues, they are actually recently going through some interviews. So we are collecting all those question banks and then we'll creating a doc out of it. So Bharat will come to your question later on in the session. So let me just open up. I have some basic doc for this. So now we gradually need to cover up all the interview questions also, right? For other topics, and also it's not only about SwiftUI, but even we need to cover some basic UIKit stuff and normal basic Swift and iOS related topics also. Right. Eventually, if we whatever the topics we are going to cover or we have covered so far, that topics we first will going to touch, and other topics like if I'm taking an example of like we are not taking UIKit from scratch here because obviously we're assuming everyone knows software, right? But we can take some kind of these kind of questions as interview questions. Those mostly asked and people still a bit confused or though the or they don't have a like in detail understanding of those topics. So in that context, we will consider those topics like in UIKit or you can say generics or higher order functions like that. Okay, so just a second. Where is my log? Mm, I think this one. Yeah. So let me share my screen. So this I've created actually last year, I think, and not it's not very much updated, but some basic topics this doc has, and like very basic thing related to again iOS and Swift and UIKit, all that stuff. So suppose we normally people ask regarding the app states also, right? So you know these kind of states, right? Foreground, background, and active, inactive, like that, right? So very famous question, very common or very basic thing. Like suppose you're using a WhatsApp and you got a call, then how WhatsApp behaves, like how the state transition happens, right? Like normally it's in active, then it goes to inactive or a background state or inactive or what, like, and how this transition happens. So we have this kind of functions like in app delegate, right? We used to have app will enter, background will enter, foreground did enter, like that, right? I hope you remember all these things. It's old stuff, but again important. So you can thumbs up on this. You are pretty aware about this basic stuff of app state in iOS. Okay. Again, I'm talking about the context of in general iOS. So I hope you aware about this. And so yeah, that is all about app state transitions. And I've linked some. I will share this doc. I'm even updating this doc. And again, I'm creating one interview question specific doc. It's almost ready. In this weekend, I will share. So you get all these question answers, some relevant links, some relevant again articles there. So it's better, and then we'll discuss in our sessions also these kind of topic and questions. Then again, lazy property, computer property. Normally people confused, but a very basic difference. Like computer property, every time it's compute, the name itself calling it's a computer property, right? So it will compute every time. But lazy is like a lazy. Okay, it will not compute every time. It will compute only once, right? And also it will compute only when initial first time also when you actually going to use this. Okay, it's not like your stored property like like once your class initialize it gets the value. It's not like that, right? So lazy property calculate only once and only when first time also when you actually need to use that property. Am I right? uh Body is computed, you can say, yeah, matlab, you can say, yeah. It's basically, yeah, it's computed again and again. And whenever we do state changes, so yeah, it actually computes and update the view. But again, I'm not going into deep dive into that. There are some concepts how actual SwiftUI updates the UI, and there are some mixed stuff, but we'll come to later on. So it's very basic, superficial thing we are right now looking into it SwiftUI. There are some depth into it, so we'll come to the depth part later on. So, but yeah, this is lazy and computer we're talking about in general Swift. Okay, it's a Swift topic basically. I'm not attaching this to the UIKit and SwiftUI. It's a part. It's beyond that. So in general, I'm talking about. Okay, then again we have stored in computer. So when very famous question people asked, again people got confused. I don't know why, but yeah, it's a bit confusing. Can you have stored properties in protocol or in extensions? So normally they ask in extension. Protocol, so obviously you don't have, but in extension, can you have stored properties? Anyone wants to answer? Or computed property, or both, or neither? Nor like, what do you think? Anyone? Can you have stored
Uh,
and properties and extensions?
uh, yeah, Kushal, extension can contain only computed property
Mm-hmm.
and it don't contain a stored property because at the time of creation of an object, it needs to know what type of data and how much memory need to store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of right. So basically, yeah, Imran, your answer is correct. So yes, it is right. Ki we can't have stored properties and extensions, and we can have computed properties, but we can't have stored properties. So the reason is behind is like whatever the class you have, whichever the class, and you writing an extension of it. So it's basically more about the state of that particular instance or identity, right? Or entity. So stored property is all about state. So that's why it's not allowed in the extension part. Okay, extension part can't control the state. It should be defined when you're actually defining that particular class or that particular entity. So that's why it is expected all your stored properties should be in your first declaration part itself. It's you can't add more stored properties later on. If you want to add, then do modify your base code itself. But you want to add some computer property, you want to add some functions, functionalities. So computer property is basically a functionality kind of, right? It's a functionality. It's not a state part, right? If you uh, you can like I can say metaphorically I'm saying like conceptually. So you can feel this ki, okay, yeah, computer property basically why we write like a very basic example I can give. You have a model, suppose, right? You have one model and you getting a date value with a full timestamp. So suppose right now the time is having around 10:45. Okay, take an example. So you're getting a timestamp like in a 24-hour format, like 22 colon 45, then 10 minutes, and then some 20 seconds and milliseconds, like the whole timestamp we actually got right in a date timestamp from the server side. And then actually on the particular screen or on the user on the UI part, we want to show as a formatable date, like a format we want to show like a 25th July and 10:45 p.m. So that we need to do some formatting, right? That you can do using date formatter, right? So to all this stuff we want to do, write 2 3 lines of code of formatting and all that thing. So I can create one of my extension property, like I can create my computer property basically, and that computer property basically use the main model property and do some calculation on it or do some formatting, and then actually I got the proper value which I can directly show on my view, or I can directly assign to my label text, right? I can directly assign to my label or my view or whatever it is, right? So computer property again, how it behaves like here, I'm adding some extra functionality or some, some add-on things I'm adding. So it's a kind of a functionality behavior, not a state behavior. State is basically again that when this model defined or when this class is defined, then you have all these instant properties or your initial properties, which is basically related to your state part. So that's why computed properties can be in extensions, but stored properties we can't have. So yeah. I hope everyone can relate to this. And it is again very famous question. Normally interview ask these things, very basic stuff, but yeah, people got confused. So they just check your key, either you are pretty comfortable with this or you are confused. So in within a seconds they can see your confidence level, right? If you are actually, suppose if you say अगर आप ऐसे बोलोगे अटक के कि okay, yeah, maybe no, ऐसा something like that, so obviously your confidence will be, it shows on your face कि okay, you're not very much confident कि how stored properties about state and all that thing, and why it's not there in extension, and why, or it can be or it can be not, like that should be clear to you. Okay, so yeah, that is again basic stuff. Then closures we have, again closures normally again very basic stuff, but asked like closure versus function, how like it's a bit different from the function, whether if it is again almost similar to that, but yes, some basic is or some minor differences are there. Also they asked regarding the capture list values. So normally, again, we are old people, we used to frequently write these closure part, right, in our API calling or in our closure handling part, or even to passing the data completion handlers like that. So we used to capture the list values, we used to capture the weak self, and then we basically use that weak self guardlet and all that thing. So that is all about capture list. So there is a concept of key. Suppose you have one function, and inside that function there is one closure, and then you are actually in that closure capture list value, how these values get captured, how these values get modified, what exactly value they are maintaining or they're capturing in that particular closure out of their environment or inside the environment. I'm talking about in that context. So again, very basic stuff, but normally again, you should be clear with this. So if you're still in confusion, go through some article on this, have some hands-on on this. You're pretty clear about it, but yeah, it's very basic stuff. Okay, how closure capture list works. Okay, then we have again size classes. Again, it's again same concept in SwiftUI also kind of. We'll come to the SwiftUI size classes part. But as far as UIKit is concerned, is it this is doc is in the context of UIKit. Okay, so it's not in the SwiftUI context. So size classes again, I hope you heard about it. So we have some classes, right, which from which we actually define key, like either we need to show like it's an iPad or Pro Max or a compact phone or a big device, or it's in landscape mode or a portrait mode, right? So we have these classes. Let me open, or even one Apple official article is there on this, but let me open one article out of it. I forgot the exact names. Let me, because so many days I haven't used this thing. uh no, this is only the question part. But let me go to the Apple size classes official base there. Let me just open that thing or open this. Yes, I'm talking in this context. See, this is one article I've opened. So we have this compact and regular basically, right? See, so even you can set it through storyboards also. Again, I'm talking about the UIKit context, or even programmatically you can do this thing. So based on that, you have okay, regular, compact, 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 regular, like that, or regular, regular, kind of. So through that, we actually come to know it's an iPad, it's an iPhone, and again landscape or portrait mode. And based on that, we actually basically our constraints, we configured those constraints according to the size classes, right? I hope you use this uh, in your like experience in your basically in your day-to-day code, right? In your companies or in your freelancing project or in your personal project, right? So it's again it's very basic stuff. It's nothing but like even in web there are some kind of media size classes concept similar in the mobile. So basically you got getting some attribute, and based on that attributes you come to know okay, I'm rendering my app on particular which size. Okay, so you come to know either it's a iPhone SE, matlab the most compact phone, or it's a Pro Max or the normal one, and it's in which mode, like portrait or landscape. This you come to know, and similarly for the iPad also you got to know. So based on that you can give your constraints basically. That's it. So very basic stuff. So based on that, you can configure your constraints, your height, your font, your again this leading, trailing, and all that constraints. So yeah, so simple, matlab very basic stuff. So let me again back to the doc. Okay, then we have this again very. I think this I have talked about in our previous session also, in one of the session. So this content again and compression resistance properties, right? So again, this we have discussed in our one of our sessions. So this is all about if two views have in same line you can say either horizontally they are aligned or vertically they are aligned, and then there is a conflict between key how much space they are going to occupy or how much space they are not going to occupy, kind of you can say. So that is all about space occupancy basically in between two views, two label, or two views. I can say simply, okay, don't go to the label because it works with the views also, right? It's not only about label, but normally people give example with labels. It's in very basic standard example. But yeah, the point is every view has this kind of priorities, and this hugging priority and resistance priority. So hugging priority is all about how much extra space kind of you're taking basically, or matlab you how much you can expand basically, kind of you can say. And resistance is how much you can't compress yourself, or uh you can shoot, like suppose if you have your value is hello world. So either your hello world is going to be shown as a hello world in a label, or it's going to be compressed. Okay, that is all about like compression resistance can define whose priority is more, and then accordingly that their content is be displayable or compressible, kind of like that you can say. So again, I hope you know about all these priorities, very basic stuff. But if you're going for interviews, at least go through these basic topics in general also. So someone, because what happened ki you all are mostly the crowd is senior software engineers here, and if you even if you suppose in doubt or are pretty confused in these topics, that's very bad impression, right, in the interview. So yeah, you can go through it some basic stuff here. Normal priorities. Basically, this question is mostly asked in UIKit context. So then we have generics again, very famous thing for interviews. So have you? I hope, matlab, maybe you're aware of it, but I will come to this topic in detail. Also, I'm planning this topic, which is not that comfortable with most of the audience or most of the candidates. So opaque types and associated types. Anyone is comfortable with opaque associated? Anyone wants to say something about it?
Yes, yes. I'm Shishobit. I want to say the easiest way to learn this generic versus opaque, they are
Mm.
opposite to each other. So you can say when a function, the caller, wants to, you know, provide a value, then it is generic. And when we want to, abstraction, when we want to hide, the return type, then we use opaque. So this is how we can compare. And associative type is related to that with opaque type, there is a problem with associated type because you can't, let's say, if a view have something associative, you can't, return. It will not allowed actually in compiler. So something that is there. That's why we, have to use generic with opaque type, with associative type, so that you know with generic, if you have associative type, then there you can provide a value. Like, I think we have to deep down in this both as well,
We'll
but
we'll keep going through this. I think, yeah, I'm getting your point, Socially, but still a bit confusing, which you're
yes,
seeing.
yes, it will
I will
still.
come to that in this in detail. And again, this is very famous topic from the interview perspective. So we'll come to this topic in detail. And again, the thing in software, it's very again, software is this is this sum view, right? So this is sum is about this thing, and they are using very frequently in SwiftUI, your normal SwiftUI view and the body property and all that. And also in UIKit also, maybe we don't, the generics that we use normally, but opaque type, associated type, no, maybe you're not using. But yeah, now the thing is, it's important from the interview perspective. So we'll come to this topic in detail in our session. But you can say so far, you can say it's again, it's more relatable, all these three topics, and it's more providing you more generic context basically. But maybe they can limit down the scope. So suppose if I'm saying ki, okay, my function is generic, I can accept any data type, but specific to, again, I can take an example of numeric. So there's one very famous example. I'm creating a function of adding few numbers, but numbers only be numeric. So numeric, you can say numeric is conforming only through integer, doubles, and yeah, what, float, right? So if, so basically my function is saying ki it will be called through only these kind of, or it can be called through for these type of data types only, either integer, float, double. And then if these kind of data types are calling, or this kind of data is passing in my function, then I can add the sum of the numbers and I can return the output. So that is basically putting some condition on it. And even we can have some where clause basically for even generics, or where clause you can say, or even not where clause, but the colon we can put he, what basically whatever, even it is generic, I'm saying as a T type. T is basically anything, right? Any data type I'm allowing, but the point is key, I can restrict to it also, right? We normally do in our day to day also this kind of code, and even you can find this kind of code in our Apple own library functions and all that. So that is also we do in generics, and again opaque associative type also we do in protocol and in normal classes, short extension, whatever. So yeah, we'll come to this thing in detail in the session.
Yes, just want to add one more thing in with protocol versus associative. So
Mhm.
there is one question which is very famous, like how can you create generic protocol? So with the help
Yeah,
of associative type. So yeah,
yeah.
that is also good question.
This question, and again very senseful question basically. So basically we used to write generic protocols using associative type. So associative type is nothing but it's a placeholder, I can say, right? It's a placeholder kind of. So by using associative type, you can make a protocol generic, and it's really a good approach, or it's a good feature actually. Swift provide this thing. So yeah, we'll come to this, but yeah, it's a good topic, and again, it's a very famous question. Normally interviews asked. So yeah. So then we have again multi-threading part. Multi-threading, the basic stuff we already covered. Few topics I've just left, which is basically task and actors wala thing, which we are going to cover in the coming sessions in the SwiftUI series. And but the normal thing, I hope whoever joined from the day one, they know or they already gone through the sessions. A few people maybe are not part of the initial sessions, so I already share the playlist, or in the group discussion also have, or in our channel also have, internal app channel. So you can go through the sessions, and it's very, again, I feel it's very easy topics, not as such complex. So you should have some basic understanding of like serial concurrent queue. Okay, how normally serial queue behaves, how concurrent queue behaves, how async await works. Sorry, not async await. I'm saying sync and async. How sync and async behave and works. So normally people also get confused. I still remember there is one candidate in our batch only. She actually asked me regarding this. She actually getting confusing with the sync versus serial and async versus concurrent. So again, this question also asked in interviews and people got confused. But again, there's nothing to do with serial with sync and concurrent with async. Two different things. It's like apple and oranges you're comparing. So don't do that. But yeah, you should be have a basic understanding or fundamental understanding of what do you mean by sync, what do you mean by async, what do you mean by serial, what do you mean by concurrent. Okay, then you have this priority stuff. You have quality of service. You have then main queue, global queue, and all that stuff. So we have already gone through these topics, and some normal NS operation also we have seen, and then we also seen this kind of thing: dispatch barrier, dispatch work item, and all that, and even dispatch group. So again, dispatch group again frequently asked, and dispatch barrier also, or work item. So dispatch group simply wants to combine few tasks parallelly. You want to implement, and then you want to just to know, okay, once all the tasks completed, you got a notification or a callback, kind of that. In that context, normally people use dispatch group. Then you have dispatch barrier or semaphore, which is basically used to create a or provide a exclusive access to any particular you can say data, or to avoid race conditions, race write block and deadlock condition kind of, you can say, or data inconsistency. You can avoid that by using this dispatch semaphore and dispatch barrier. It's a kind of a lock. You're providing a lock. You are deciding कि one resource or one thread at a time can enter into this code block, so that multiple people, if entered and they change the code, obviously, sorry, not change the code, they change the data, change the value, you're providing write access basically, and you're changing the value of any one property or a variable, obviously it will get corrupt. It will not be in sync if multiple threads actively changing the value, right? So to avoid that thing, they basically provide, or you can implement this thing, or you can achieve this behavior by using dispatch barrier, dispatch semaphore. Already we have covered in the session. You can go through it once. Cool. So yeah, this again some basic stuff regarding multi-threading, GCD. So again, this is GCD. Again, normally people ask sync versus async, serial concurrent, all that stuff. Then print questions, again famous asked. Print questions normally, again, it's asked in interviews. So we have taken some questions. Some questions I'm again going to take in coming sessions. I'm planning one specific interview question session. So in that session, we are going to take GCD questions again for revision purpose also, and for again to those who haven't attended, so they can also relate to it. So print questions again very famous. They give you some code snippets, and they give you like in there are multiple blocks on your sync serial queue, concurrent queue, sync async blocks they have, and they ask you okay, predict the output. Okay, so some output you can predict right away. Some output you can say okay, it can be or it cannot be, because it's an asynchronous behavior. So you can't exactly say the pattern, you can say. But if it's a serial queue, it's a sync block or something like that, where you are pretty sure okay, this kind of pattern is going to be happen. So you can predict that output, right? So I hope some of kind of these questions we already seen, and you also maybe have go through these things in your journey or in interviews, right? So yeah, so it's not that tough, it's easy if you have basic understanding of all these, how queue works, how async await works, and also how QoS, quality of service, and all that thing, then easily you can answer these questions. Okay, it's not that tough actually, it's easy. Then again, dispatch group, again I talked about it, semaphore, dispatch semaphore, all that. Then architecture patterns. So I can go with the first MVVM, again very basic stuff. But if you're still not comfortable with MVVM, it's a big concern, but don't worry, I'm coming to MVVM in the coming session itself. So, but I hope, or I actually assume ki you have used MVVM in UIKit at least. In SwiftUI, will look into it, but also I'm going to take these topics in detail because people are not that confident in architecture patterns. And I have seen ki either the companies give you the assignment, or even in interview, they right away give you a question and say ki, okay, start implementing, and they actually see you how you are writing your code or how you architecting, designing your code basically. Okay, so there actually they judge you even in system design rounds or even in normal technical rounds. They see how your understanding is of architecture, of design patterns, how basically your more cleaner, scalable code you're writing, right? Or even solid principles. So this is whole detail we are coming up in the coming sessions. We are going to take this in detail with the good examples and all the fundamental concepts of architecture pattern, design pattern, everything stuff. But in the meantime also you can go through it, and you should have some basic understanding at least what is MVVM, how MVVM behaves, why MVVM is kind of better than MVC. That at least you should know, right? MVC is a very old pattern. Still maybe some small company, small project can use. No, it's not like ki Apple will reject your code, right? It's not like that, but not recommended at all. If even your project is still a little bit big, you getting issues in MVC, it's not that easy to maintain or scalable code or a cleaner code in MVC. So obviously highly recommended to go with MVVM to make your code more testable, more writable, right? So it's highly recommended to go with MVVM or even other design architecture patterns. Like you can say Viper also. We'll come to Viper as well. So Viper is basically, I can say it's inspired by MVVM, but you can say a more extra layer into it. I hope anyone use Viper so far can raise a hand. I can relate to MVVM with Viper, but with more extra layer, with more extra component, you can say, because in Viper we have a router component and also one more component, you can say. So it's basically more extended version of MVVM, I can say, right? If you can relate to it, you can thumbs up. Viper with MVVM, you can compare these two. So it's all about like your how you're again modelizing your code and how it can be more testable code by using writing test cases like TDD and all that thing. And and again, if you want to add something, want to change something, how easy to do this thing. Okay, it should not break your existing code. So it's also about that. So also like that's why solid principles are very important. We'll come to solid principle also. I hope basic solid principle you already know, but yeah, we'll come to in detail of the solid principle, very famous thing from interview perspective. So yeah, these are kind of design patterns. Again, all the patterns are not that much important, but yeah, some patterns are important. So like singleton is very famous, you know. Maybe you use it very frequently, right? So singleton normally asks factory, sometimes people ask take adapter, very few matlab, I hardly find observer and all that thing. But yeah, out of all these, singleton is very much important, I can say. Other are basic, you can, if you know about it, that's enough. But yeah, singleton at least you should be have very good understanding. So that is important actually. But yeah, we'll come to the whichever the patterns are important or asked, or even like dependency injection on all these topics. We'll come to that in the sessions in detail. Okay, then again very basic stuff, but still I included in the doc because people still confused in this. But it's not expected from the senior audience, at least even from the junior, both. It doesn't matter you're senior or junior, but the point is this is important, right? So I hope everyone know what's the difference between open versus public. They actually asked you directly, open versus public, very famous question. They can also ask you file private versus private, and internal versus default, or both are the same kind of. So yeah, they can
Defi-
ask you. This
Default
is a
is not should not be there. I think internal
Hmm.
is is by default.
Yeah. So actually, that's what I'm saying. Internal default is same. It just the terminology. Someone say internal
Mhm.
as a default also kind of. So, but how the point is key. Very famous question regarding open versus public, and yeah, in that people actually confused. I found so far. He You should be at least aware about when to use open, or when in which context open is actually useful, and when to use public. And normally again the recommended part is don't use big I'm saying you don't use public, open, these kind of access modifier until unless it is not in the context, or until unless it is actually not genuinely you don't if you don't have need of these kind of access modifier, don't make your data or make your classes or struct or properties accessible to everyone. Getting my point? So if it is, so that's why in our own class, suppose, or in our own controller, if I'm writing a function or writing a property which I know it's going to be used internally only, then obviously I will make it private, right? Why I should I make even default, right? Even I internal, because I know ki other class is not going to use it. So go with private itself, right? We can scope down, because by default it's going to be internal, but no need to even use internal, right? So you can make it private. But if you know ki, okay, nay, it's going to be used with other classes, other modules, then okay, you can think about default and other stuff, right? And even public again is a question ki, really you want public, then define public, otherwise don't define. And open to again it's normally not in our context day-to-day development. It consists of like framework, SDK and other stuff. But yeah, we'll come to that also. But yeah, I hope you getting my point. Ki, this point you are getting understand ki why eventually you want to avoid every time you don't want to write a private or a default internal or open, right? Try to go with the as low as possible with the access modifier, right? So normally it's a good practice. Normally we try to avoid these things. Go with the private, default or internal. Matlab, normal internal or default, sorry, or private or file private. If really needed to go with the public, it's genuinely required. Only then define public. Otherwise, don't no need to define public, right? So that is the actually best practice we normally follow in our day-to-day coding, right? So yeah, so the basic understanding you can have, so Apple official doc, you can go through it. You should have some again basic understanding so that you will not confuse with when to use what and what actually is required when. Like basically, you should have some context of it. Then again, we have user defaults, normal thing again keychain. So normal stuff you can store there and when to use when and the importance of it, that you should know kind of basic stuff. Then error handling we have. Again, I hope and I assume ki you know basic error handling again in the iOS and in UIKit. Or again, it's not about UIKit, it's about normal basic iOS and Swift I'm saying. So you know maybe try with question mark, try with again exclamation, then throw and throws again very famous question, but people get confused. So if you're not again comfortable, I would recommend you go through it at least. We'll come to these topics once, we'll touch it if it is really I feel or you feel it's important. But if it's very basic, you can go through it on your own, right? But if it is there's a scope, if there are some complex stuff to discuss or some detailed deep dive is required, then we'll like consider this topic in the session. But I hope you know about all these topics beforehand. So it's very common, very basic stuff. Then again, we have dynamic dispatch, SSL pinning. SSL pinning, I'm planning again one session. We are planning on SSL pinning, uh, which I also include in our batch curriculum. So whichever the important topics or deep dive depth wale topics, I already included in this batch curriculum. So SSL pinning, I hope basic stuff you know. SSL pinning, anyone can raise hand. Or again, it's very famous from interview perspective. Anyone face this question in the interview? So there are some SSL pinning, certificate pinning, and all that stuff, and how this SSL pinning works actually, how you can implement in your project. At least some basic stuff you should know about it. So very famous, again, very frequently asked topic. So don't skip this topic. I highly recommend you cover this at least basic you should know of SSL pinning. Very famous topic it is. So yeah, cool. Then again, very basic thing, initializers. Even here, people also get confused, but there's no problem in getting confused. But at least now clear your confusion. That's the main important thing, right? आप confused हो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, but अब confused मत रहो. हो सकता है कल आपका interview. Maybe you are appearing interview for tomorrow. At least today itself, you should know at least this basic stuff, right? You can go through it right away after the session. So again, people get confused and require this parameterized, failable initializers, convenience, when to use default one, when to use convenience, when to use designated or failable. So in which context which is usable, which is not, when to use what, or what are the basic differences between all these initializers, and why these kind of 3, 4, 5 types of initializers are there in Apple or in Swift, right? So at least you should know the again the basic understanding of. So I've linked some good article here. I will share this doc with you. You can go through it. So yeah. Okay, I will give you the link as a viewer link or a commenter link you have already. So I will share the list this link of the doc. You can go through it. Yeah. So I hope again I assume ki you already know, but if you have still any confusion, so please go through it again. It sometimes they ask you on these basic topics also. Then we have again some protocol stuff, but not that important. Then higher order function is basically no one will ask you kind of ki, okay, have do you know about map or filter or sort or compact map or like that. But the point is, in my journey, what I feel, interviewer normally asks you ki write your own higher order function, right? This is very famous question. I hope anyone face this question. You can raise a hand, matlab thumbs up. Write your own higher order function. Very famous question. So in this topic, your two understanding actually they check, matlab, they actually check your concepts, whether you have a basic understanding of generics and whether you have understanding of higher order function. Both is covered in this question, right? So you can only write this kind of higher order function on your own if you know the basics of generics, how generic works, right? So yeah, again, I would highly recommend go and practice of this. We can take this even in our session also. We're going to take this topic, very small topic. We can consider this thing, but yeah, I hope you can also go through it and on your own you can write. It's very basic stuff. If you know very basic of generics, then you can write your own, right? And I hope you know how map works, like normally map function, right? You know map function, you know filter, compact map, all these things, right? Sort and reduce. So at least those are which are the 5 6 famous higher order function. At least go and practice out of it. You write your try to write your own higher order function, and play with some variation also. Okay, so at least in the interview someone asks you and give some variation, you should not be blank with it, right? At least you have some basic understanding, basic logical understanding of it, so you can at the spot you can give it a attempt and you can solve that problem, right? So that is the concern. Cool. So I think that's it. So basic stuff I've added in this doc, and eventually this is a older doc. Basically I'm creating one more doc with the interview questions basically. So and there we'll highlight some topics, some questions which we feel ki it's really important. And I would also recommend you someone in the group tell ki, okay, create an Excel and have the tabs. But I feel it's what you feel. Let me know also. But personally, I feel ki don't go with the 1,000 questions. Doesn't make sense. So because if we going to collect na ki everyone, every company and every all that, so 1,000 question doesn't make sense actually. I feel personally ki 1,000 question is all about again that 50 60 topics, and whichever is really important and making sense, only those topics we should highlight and we should consider. Unnecessary if we creating a very big doc or very big Excel sheet and people will feel that overwhelming and all that thing, that actually I want to avoid basically. I hope you're getting my point. So instead of having 1,000 question, having only maybe 100 or 200 max, I'm giving a rough example, but really that 100 200 topic or questions is really important and really making sense, or really making like those topics or questions, then you have a good understanding of it, and then you go in any interview and you can easily crack those interviews like that making sense actually, right? So that I'm actually planning to build those kind of question topics, and with some good articles or some good our notes also and our sessions also, so at least we can have a cumulative understanding of all those topics in detail, and then you don't have any fear of these kind of questions or any these kind of topics, right? Again, this struct versus class also you can say uh, frequently asked, still frequently asked with the senior software engineers also, and people get confused why structs are fast and why classes are slow, which memory they are using. And again, the very basic and fundamental difference of struct and class. If you say only reference type, value type, but they are not expecting this kind of answer, right? If you are a senior software engineer, they're expecting a very mature answer out of you, right? Not like a childish answer, right? So don't feel bad, don't take it in the wrong way. But obviously, if you're a very senior guy, very mature person, they expect a good depth wala answer like out of you, right? So again, make sure you have a good understanding in depth how these particular things work. View control lifecycle, again, very basic stuff. So yeah, cool. So today actually I want to touch these particular the concern of interview questions, topics, and doc. And you can also have any suggestion. Let me know what we are planning. Even I'm planning in this batch a mock interviews also with the candidates. So, but we are actually waiting for a few topics to be covered. Like so far we have covered multi-threading and SwiftUI, and again, SwiftUI is very initial phase. Still, a lot of topics are there. So once we covered a decent topics of SwiftUI and then MVVM and architecture design patterns, we are planning the coming topics and then combine. Then we actually eventually start with the mock interview part. So at least we should have some topics to you should have some topics, right, to go through the mock interviews. And also parallelly we are building this kind of question set, or you can say topics, and some good this kind of docs which we have a good decent article links also, so you can on your own also you can go through these topics and you can prepare yourself. And also we are planning one project which I already mentioned, two projects we have finalized, that society marketplace and this matrimony app. So that we eventually going to start, but again, very basic topics we have come so far. So I want you should have this kind of confidence. We can actually एक अंदर से फील आता है कि you okay, we have a very good understanding of SwiftUI. Now we can build anything. Kushal, you can tell me what you want to build, or give me the Figma and we can create it. So that kind of confidence I need. Okay, so that actually we are going to achieve in coming few weeks, you can say. But literally we are going to achieve this kind of confidence. Then you can say, okay, now SwiftUI is not a concern. Whatever I can do in UIKit, I can do in SwiftUI also. Like that kind of confidence I want. So we will achieve this kind of confidence. So then also with any architecture design pattern, with even combine, people normally have a fear of combine and all that stuff. So we are going to cover all these topics in detail, and then we start building a project from scratch. And this sorry, GitHub repo I've created with named as iOS Lab. So there we used to, I will share the basic sample projects, everything, but eventually we are starting with the project. So on from your own account, you can contribute in this project. You can again submit your assignments. So eventually I want to build your LinkedIn and GitHub profile also. So for your GitHub profile, it's really good if you showcase as a key you're actually learning in your day to day, and you are contributing either in an assignment or in a project or in an open source project or something you are doing something. Getting a point. So it really helps you to build your GitHub profiles, LinkedIn profiles. That actually, so it will help you eventually to get more opportunities in the market. Okay, I hope you got like you relating this point. Yep. Anyone?
Yes, Shobit.
Yeah.
Yes. So like I first time joined this session,
Okay.
and I find this really helpful and very good. Just want to give my feedback. Like, yeah, this is very good session. Just want to add one more thing. Like, I'm not sure. Have you covered in threads sendable protocol,
Send it.
thread versus task? Because I'm
Then I'm
interviewing
going to
these
cover
days.
actually. Task I haven't touched, so I'm
Mm.
planning to coming
Okay,
sessions.
okay. So
Task.
if you yeah, if you not covered, then I would suggest you should add those topic as well, because I like face such questions in recent interview. Apart
Sure, sure.
from that,
In the plan, the thread one
yes.
task and all that. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Apart from that, there is one more question, about frameworks, like why we use embedded, what is embedded sign-in, and even like how you can create your own SDK. And let's say if you
I'm
use
coming to this.
multiple SDK, then
I'm planning.
recycling and something happens. Yeah, yeah, you
I'm
can.
planning one sample on this actually. Matlab, I want everyone we should write our own framework SDK, and we can even distribute through either SPM or Cocoa. So now it's not that usable, but yeah, eventually you should know ki if suppose in future if you want to write your own SDK, your own framework, you can do it. So it's not that actually again not that tough or complex. So we are going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
cover
I want to mention something else. Like,
this.
let's say you are in a big company and your company use multiple, internal frameworks.
Yes,
Then,
yes, yes.
the relationship between those frameworks sometimes, create issues while building your app. If they have any
Internet.
cycle, which
Yes, yes,
framework should import, which framework, like there are some core framework, then other
yes,
framework
yes.
using that. So that topic actually, that is very,
That- Yeah. So basically,
dynamic
internal
versus static.
components are there, and there is internal dependencies are defined in the config.
Yes,
So based on that, they actually import or in your framework or library. So yeah, we'll take this topic. Cool, no issues.
yes, yes. And I also want to, be a part of your as a contributor as well. So
Mhm.
yes, I think I'm not taking this session. You can go on. I will, connect you separately. Thank you.
Cool, cool. So, but we are just actually
So,
about to wrap.
can you please
Yeah.
share this doc?
Yeah. This sharing, you are. I hope you are the part of the group, right? So I'm
Yes.
sharing this doc link in our group itself, and
Okay.
eventually I will add more topics into this doc, and with again interview question doc, I'm coming with it. So yeah, so it's a combination of both.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Sakshan, you want to say something? You have raised hand raised.
No question.
Okay, then I think by mistake. No problem. So I hope, yeah, anyone else want to add something wants to say something? Yeah, sure. Sorry. I will also this doc link will update in the group description. On again, the new people, जो लोग अभी recently add हुए हैं groups में, they can check the group description. Mostly all the relevant links are there in the group description. I will add this link also. We'll share in the message also or in the group description both. Okay, so I hope if you're actively appearing for the interviews, go through these basic topics. Today, actually, we are planning the SwiftUI topic, but let's go to the next session in detail. We are going to cover this observe environment object and UI part, complex UI, and some MVVM part also, basically, in the SwiftUI. So next session, actually, I'm planning a Sunday afternoon. Mostly around 2:30. I will confirm you the timings, but you can consider as a 2:30 p.m. right now. As of now, you can consider 2:30 p.m. IST, Sunday afternoon, the next session, which is the day after tomorrow. Okay, so we'll go cover this topic, and today is all about we covered with the generic topics of normally frequently asked, the normal basic topics or basic questions regarding UIKit and iOS stuff for Swift. Okay, cool. I hope this will be useful for you, and thanks everyone for joining the session, and see you in the next session. In the meantime, again, whoever is started with the assignments, make sure you do some hands-on so that you have a better understanding of whichever topics we have covered so far in the SwiftUI. Even you can go with other topics which we haven't taken, but you can on your own, you can try. It's good to have, right, to practice those topics and get a confidence on those topics. Cool. So yeah, we'll share the updates in the group, and thanks everyone. Good night. Take care. Thank you. Yes, Ankita.
Can
say
we
some-
get this document interview preparation questions?
Yes. I'm sharing this doc in the group.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks.